Center, and this is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. This is Thursday, February 8th, and we are coming to you right here from the Rock Health and Wellness Center studios. I know all you guys that watch this show every single night or multiple nights, y'all know all this stuff, but that's where we are. We're coming to you live on 98.7 Walk by Faith Radio at 1420 AM Lubbock Christian Nation and 98.7 or 987radio.com. And if you want to listen to us on the radio anywhere in the whole world, you can catch us up right there. I think the whole world. We should be available. Anywhere that there's an internet, you should be able to get us. Or you can go to your phone and you can go to the App Store and you can get the Live 365 app if you want to take your radio with you. And you can listen to the radio show anywhere in the world right there on your phone through your app. So any of those are available to you. Wherever you are, if you want us to try to help you, and I really hope that's what we're doing. I hope we're helping you live a better life. I hope that you're taking some of this information that you get from us on the radio or on social media, and you're actually taking it with you and applying it. And I get feedback from you guys, and it's been great. I really appreciate the feedback. I appreciate you listening to the show, and I think we're gaining some traction a little bit. I know it's going to take a while to we've got a lot of things to compete with, and this show's not the most exciting thing all the time, but I think there's some good stuff that we give you, some good information that we give you, and I think it can make a difference in your life. So I appreciate it. I really appreciate you listening to the show. I appreciate the feedback. Hope you guys have had a great day. Hope you've had a great week. I know some of you have had a challenging week. I know personally that some of you have had a challenging week, and that everything, sometimes you get lost in the days, and we don't know what to do with the way things are working out, and we just keep moving forward. That's what we all try to do together. We're all in this planet together, and we're all just trying to keep moving forward, and sometimes it's hard. So hang in there. All you guys they're having tough days, hang in there. It's going to get better. We got sunshine coming. That's one thing that's going to make it better here in another month or so. And it's always better in March and April. The wind will start blowing here in Lubbock, and then the whole skies will turn brown, and then it'll be like we're back to normal, right? If you guys have never been to Lubbock, if you're listening to the show from somewhere else, and you've never been to Lubbock, you should come to Lubbock in spring and just experience it, because it's really kind of hard to describe exactly the beautiful skies that we have here in the spring, when all the dirt just starts floating up in the air because the wind's blowing and the whole sky turns brown. And we had a big old, what they call them, haboobs. Had a big one of those yesterday. I missed it. I was in the office the whole time. It was all happening while we were working, and I missed it all. So, but anyway, if you're not from Lubbock, you should come to Lubbock. It's the mecca of health and wellness, actually. So you can actually come here and learn about health and wellness, and we'd be glad to help you out. There's good folks in Lubbock, Texas. I'm glad to live here and glad to be a part of West Texas and Eastern New Mexico in my background, and then I even spent 6 years in Oklahoma. So I actually had a new patient yesterday that was from Tulsa, and we got to spend some time talking about our time and my time in Oklahoma, and good people that I've got to meet in my lifetime, good folks that around those small towns that I got to live in and be a part of when I was a young child. So I guess that's pretty much everywhere you go, there's good people, I think. So, and we're just trying to make those good people's life better. So that's what we're doing tonight. We're just going to talk about some things. I got like a whole list of things to talk about. We've been pretty serious about things this week. If you missed last night's show about Blitzed, you might want to go back and watch that show, because we tied in the Flexner report. We've spoken about it for the last 2 nights. I'm not going to get into it tonight but the last 2 nights we talked about it, and exactly, I might get into it a little bit here after we get through some of this stuff. But if you want to know how things happen, if you want to know how we got to the places that we are, the there's a reason that things are run the way that they're run. And if you want to study the way that our medical model is in the United States, you can go back and study that, and it's not controversial. It's not critical. Wasn't being critical of them last night. I was just simply pointing out how we operate, and we all don't really understand it because it was already in motion for 50 years before we ever got a chance to experience it. But some of the old people, some of you old timers out there, y'all can understand it better than we can. Some of us middle timers, and these young people don't have any idea. It's just the way it is. So I thought that was a good show. I learned a lot. I learned a lot by reading this book, Blitzed. I didn't know the stories that I learned in this book. It's a really good book. Norman Ohler is the author of it. And if you just wanted some information, it was a good book about the German medical model and how they got their whole country hooked on drugs, and how we mimicked them when we set up our medical model here in the United States. And then guess what? We got a whole country hooked on drugs. Same thing happened. So good shows. All right. So tonight I want to get into got some random thoughts, and I've got some, which I don't believe in random, but I've got some thoughts about different subjects. So it's not going to be a whole show based on one subject. It's going to be, I'm getting a text right now because I know one of my listeners is middle timers. Yeah, there you go. Because we're going to talk about one of my guys, one of my main men right here. That's a good listener of the show. There's a great guy in the office. Every once in a while, he gets himself in a bind, and he's got a little low back disc that flares up on him. And he's a regular person. He's a regular patient in the office. He gets adjusted every week. He's a great dude. He lives well most of the days, but every once in a while he gets himself in a bind. And so last week that happened to him, and we had to do some pit crew work. And so so he came in today, and he's like, I'm back to normal, 100%, feel great, doc. And I'm like, well, that's good. And I said, I really do like this whole NASCAR chiropractic model. And he just kind of laughed, and I was like, you live life at 198 miles an hour, and you give me 14 seconds to change your tires and fill you up with gas and clean off your windshield and make a track bar adjustment. I hear them say that when I'm watching NASCAR every once in a while. I have no idea what a track bar is. I don't know anything about cars, but I understand airing up the tires, and I understand filling it up with gas, clean off the windshield. That's almost the extent of my knowledge about cars. So when they start talking about making all those adjustments and all that stuff, I don't know what they're talking about. You car people, y'all probably understand what that's about. But I think it's a great analogy. I think it's a great analogy that, sometimes we're going to get out there when we're rubbing and racing, and we're going to put a fender into the wall. That we're gonna rub tires with somebody, and we're gonna smash our fender down on the tire, and every once in a while we're gonna put it into the wall kind of hard, and so it's the pit crew's job to get the car running, to get them back on the track, right? And that's kind of what we do in wellness chiropractic. It's like, hey, look, we try to keep you running full speed. I want you to live life full speed. That's the whole point of it. I want you to get out there and live life full speed. I asked a patient this week, do you have a purpose in life? And that patient looked at me and said, I don't know what you mean. And I said, well, does it make any difference if you live or die, or would anybody care? Or does it make any difference to be healthy? And she just kind of looked at me, and she was like, I don't know. And it's like, well, it's tough then, right? Because it's really tough if you don't have a purpose and you don't have a reason why. It's really tough to get out there and compete and fight and live life and enjoy all the things that life brings you, and whether they're good or bad, they're still part of life, right? So, but sometimes you just need to if you just had 14 seconds, you just had to come in for a pit stop really quickly, get checked. And that's kind of what wellness chiropractic is a lot of times. It's like, hey, most of the time, it's just a pit stop on a NASCAR race where you're going 198 miles an hour. Doesn't take long. Come in, get adjusted, hit the road, and get out of there. But every once in a while, you jam that fender into that tire, and now we got to get that hammer out, and we got to knock that fender off of that tire. And we were laughing because we said Bondo tape. I don't know. I don't know if it's called Bondo tape or not. I don't know. I just made that up. But sometimes you just got to get that tape and just fix the fender for, let's go. We're in the middle of the race. We got to go. We got to get it fixed and we got to move on. And so that's kind of what the way I see it, the care that we provide in the office. It's like most of the time we're rocking, we're wellness, we're moving along, things are going good. We're just tuning up and go. But sometimes we got to slow down. We got to revamp the whole thing. Sometimes we got to pull the motor out of that dude and redo the whole thing. And we do, and we can. And sometimes when you first start in the office, you're not really moving full speed. You've got some challenges that you've been dealing with, and it's hard to get yourself going. And so you need some help. You need some specific help in the beginning, and we can work through some of those things. And we've got, like I said, I think I said it this week. I think it was Tuesday maybe, where I adjusted a 6-day-old baby and an 85-year-old person. Yeah, I was on Tuesday when we went to Littlefield, and I adjusted an 85-year-old person. So I got college athletes that we take care of, and I've got stay-at-home moms that we take care of, and I've got businessmen and doctors and nurses and physical therapists and all that stuff that we take care of here at The Rock. So whatever your problem is, if you need some help, we're here for you. So that's just one. That was one funny thing I just thought we'd talk about today. A little bit serious, a more serious one, but still a little bit lighthearted in the conversation. Was I asked one of my moms today. I've been taking care of her before she was even married. So before she was a mom or before she was married. And so she's been a big part of our practice. And I just asked her, I said, so what are some of the things that I could talk about on the radio? And I said, mentioned something about T-ball. Her little 4-year-old, or just about to be 4, has started playing T-ball this year. And she said, yeah, talk about how you fit it all in. So she's got one that's about to be 4, and I guess the other one is 1. And she's got 2 little boys. Her husband works. She works. She has a full-time job. And she's got the kids. So I've always looked at that from a standpoint of, like, if I personally was a human resources director, and I know we've talked about this months ago, but if I was a human resources director and I was going to write out a job description because I was going to hire someone to do those 3 jobs, that's 3 separate job descriptions in my opinion. If you're a mom, you've got children, and you're married, you have a husband, and you have a job. If I was going to hire somebody to do those 3 things, the job description would be different between all 3 of those job descriptions, right? And 2 of those job descriptions are 24/7, 365 jobs. And then the other one's that little old 40, 50, 60-hour job, that measly thing that you do on the side. It's a tough thing to go through, especially with little kids. You've got a lot going on. There's a lot going on, and Leslie and I went through that. My mom and dad went through that. I had a brother and a sister, so there was 5 of us in our family. Leslie's family went through that. She's got a brother and a sister, so there was 5 of them in their family, and then they ended up watching some cousins, and so they ended up, or one of the cousins, so they ended up being 6 in the group. And so I've got experience raising 2 kids, going through that, watching Leslie, see how she does that. And I just want to encourage the moms out there. I want to encourage them to know, first of all, I know that I could never really and truly understand what it's like to be a mom, right? I'm not trying to pretend that I do. So, but I just want to encourage all the moms out there to understand that there are seasons in life that are difficult. They're not they're busy. They're not necessarily bad. They're just busy. And sometimes in the world we live in today, with these cell phones and all the things that we have, we sometimes compare ourselves to other people, and it's a little bit unfair because I was talking. We were talking today. I just have two young teachers that I take care of. One's 22, one's 25, and we were talking about some things about their generation of stuff and about what it was like when Leslie and I started dating in the 80s, the 1980s for all you youngsters. When Leslie and I started dating back then, there was no internet. There was no cell phones. Like, you actually called somebody on the phone, and when you called them on the phone, and they might not answer. Like, if you called the house, I used to call Leslie's house, and she wouldn't answer. And there was no caller ID back then. You had no idea who was calling, and I don't know what she was doing. She might have been dating some other guy. She might have been with her mom at shopping. She might have been with her dad someplace. Like, I don't have any idea where she was. But back in the 80s, you used to call somebody up, and then if she didn't answer the phone, I'd probably go outside and play basketball with my little brother for 2 hours. Like, it was like, well, she's not home. I'll call her back later. And it's so crazy to think about that in today's world, because in today's world, everybody knows that, right? Like, that's just not what we do anymore. Like, that's just not that's and all of us who are old enough to remember. Now it does make me sound like an old timer, not a middle timer anymore. But it makes it. It's like, you remember back in the day when we used to call somebody and they weren't there, and then you just went on with your business, right? So I think being a mom and a dad, really being a young couple with young children in today's world, it's just busy. There's so much that you got going on. And she said, one of the things that she said to me is just like, how do you get it all in? And I thought I'd just talk about some strategies, or just some of the things that Leslie and I did. And and we got lucky because I was in a situation to where Leslie got to be a stay-at-home mom for the most of the time. And that's very advantageous to a family, but it's also very what the husbands need to understand about a stay-at-home mom is that that's a full-time job in and of itself. Like, when I ask people, did you work outside the home, or do you have a job or whatever, and they're like, no, I'm a stay-at-home mom. Like, so many times they say it like it's not a big deal, and I can tell you that's a tough job. It's a non-stop job. Like, when I get finished with this radio show and I go home, it's going to be 7:05. I'm going to get home, and I'm going to sit down, and I'm going to eat supper, and I'm going to kick my feet up, and I'm just going to chill. Like, I'm just going to turn it off, and I'm going to chill for a little while. Well, moms don't get to do that, right? There's very seldom time where moms get to do that. They have to work all day long, and if they're at home, they got to work, and if they have a job, they have to work. And they got to get this one to ball practice over here, and they got to get this one to dance lessons over here, and it's just busy, right? So some of the things that you can do if you have the opportunity to do that. Number one, if the husbands would just pay attention to things, and if your husband doesn't pay attention to things, maybe you should get him to watch the show. And maybe we can make him healthier. And the first thing you could do is get him to take his fish oil, because that will help his brain. So if your husband's brain is not working properly, get him to take some fish oil. That would be a very good solution to your husband, to seeing if you can help your husband's brain. But it does help when both of you are working together. Some of the things about nutrition that you can get into, it is just One of the things we did at our house is we tried to look for high fructose corn syrup and stay away from it. That was a simple model. Let's start with one thing at the house. So when you go buy peanut butter, like right, we don't buy peanut butter, we buy almond butter, but some of you still buy peanut butter. You can get Smucker's peanut butter and it's peanuts and salt, and that's it. Like if you look on the label of the peanut butter, that's all you're going to find. Now, if you get into all those other ones, there'll be a bunch of them and they'll have high fructose corn syrup in it. Now, I don't know why. I don't know why they put all that crap in the food that we eat. Maybe we should break down how the food industry's developed and who we modeled that after. But that's a simple thing. So Cokes was something with the kids that we didn't have in the house. Leslie, thank goodness, Leslie's the one that did that. She's the one that said, "Hey, I don't want the kids to drink Cokes," and she just cut out Cokes when Jacob was born, and he turned 26 last week. And so we haven't had Cokes in our house in 26 years. For any, like, we had one party. I think we had one party when Caitlin was maybe a junior or something in high school, junior or senior in high school, and we went and bought a bunch of Cokes and Sprites and Dr. Peppers, and I think they're still in our refrigerator in our garage. So, and she's 23. She's already graduated college. We just don't drink Cokes at the house. That's a simple thing right there. That's a high fructose corn syrup toxin right there. Just eliminate the Cokes. Watch out when you buy the food. The breads are hard. You got to watch out for the breads, because the breads, you'd be so surprised how many times you pick up a loaf of bread and it's got high fructose corn syrup in it. There's really challenging when you get to syrups. Almost every syrup is high fructose corn syrup. And so you got to kind of watch out. You got to buy some, you got to find them. There's a few of them in there. Now, syrup is all sugar, and you're going to put it on a pancake, which is refined carbohydrates. And I get it, that's not health. That's ill health, and that's going to cause you to have trouble. That's not really what you want. But I'm just saying, like, I know that sometimes moms and dads get overwhelmed with things. But so maybe just if you were just to pay attention to those little things like that, how you were going to, if I was going to look for one thing that I was going to try to stay away from the kids is, I mean, obviously all the sugar that we talk about and all the other things that we talk about are really big deals, but high fructose corn syrup is one that we just tried to stay away from. We tried to stay away from at all costs if we could, and that was one thing that we did. Another thing that we did is we try to do everything together. And I know it, but it takes away from maybe my business. I didn't do shows like this when I was raising my kids because we had too much going on. I wasn't going to stay at the office until 7:00 every night when we had the kids. Now, I know some of you guys, you business people, y'all drive and do all that stuff. I understand it, but I'm trying to address young moms and dads right now that might be getting a little bit overwhelmed with what's going on, and how do you fit it all in, right? Because if you can control some of your nutrition, it will help on the fitness side of it. And even if you just would figure out a routine where maybe you could trade out some time that each one of you could go to the gym or get some sort of exercise, even if it was on the weekends. One thing that I've started doing right now, and I know we've talked about the Sabbath and all that sort of thing, and finding a day of rest. But one thing that I've started doing lately is I've just added a fourth day. I've always had that third day. We work out. Leslie and I work out together. Now, this is a different story because the kids are grown, but we work out together on Tuesdays and Fridays. But then a lot of times I'll come back up here on Saturdays and get a workout in on Saturday. And when it's starting in 2024, what I've done is I actually added Sunday morning before church. I'll come up here and get a 40-minute workout in and do some aerobics. I do my HIIT workouts on Tuesday and Friday, and then do some aerobics on those other days. And I think it's starting to I'm liking it. I'm liking the routine of doing that. The other thing we've done is, and this is all Leslie's fault, is we've just started doing 20 push-ups every day. So every single day we try to get in our 20 push-ups. And that's just one, it doesn't take a lot of time, right? So you could trade off times where you get some exercise, and you could also do some little things like that, that you could do some air squats and some push-ups, and you could even do some sit-ups, and it wouldn't take you, if you just did 20 of them a day, it wouldn't take you 5 minutes to get that fitness in. And just a little bit of fitness and just a little bit of nutrition combined together will take a little bit of stress off of you and give you a better opportunity to handle your environment that you're in. And then just be careful about your expectations, because something's got to give. And there's very few people. There are a few of you guys that are super hyper competitive and super hyper focused, and you can handle all the things. So God bless you. We all love you. But that's not who I'm talking about. Who I'm talking about is the regular old moms and dads, the regular folks that have the kids that get overwhelmed sometime. Maybe if you just had one or two little things that you might could do, that would be a good idea. Hey, we're coming up on a break. I hope you guys will hang around for the second half. I want to get into degenerative disc disease just a little bit, just to kind of clarify that up. And then, so we'll be right back right after these messages. Yeah, and since we're on a break, I've got some exciting news. I've talked to two. I talked to Chaley, and you guys remember Chaley from our office. That's it. She's in chiropractic school now, and there's actually another kid that's in chiropractic school that is from Roswell. That is a big part of MJ and Katie's office over at the Rock Chiropractic in Roswell. Two separate offices, but same name. But both of those students, they're in chiropractic school, and I sent them a message this weekend, just checking in with them. And they're going to start coming on the show. And so I look forward, maybe we could get something set up next week with Chaley and then Nate the next week, and see if we can maybe get some perspective from what a chiropractic student is doing. So that's something that's new on the horizon, is maybe adding them to the show just a little bit, so that I think it'd be fun. I think it'd be fun to talk about. It'd be fun for me to talk about what's going on in chiropractic school. They're both going to Parker College in Dallas, and that's where I went. That's where MJ and Katie went. It's where Joe Fraley, our good guy in Ruidoso, went, and which I'm going to get to go see him in 2 weeks. He's putting on another seminar up there in 2 weekends. So I'm going to get to go hang out with Joe. He's got some good things lined up for us. So I'm excited about getting to do that. We've got some new technology that's coming to the office, I think, and that I'm not quite ready to pull the trigger on announcing it. But as soon as we do, I think you guys will really enjoy it. We'll see if we can get that pulled off here really quickly. All right, give me 1 second. We're going to come back to the show. Okay, we're back. This is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. It is Thursday, February 8th, and we're just talking about some different ideas that we've talked about with some patients today. And one of the other one, you guys that have watched the show, you've seen this before, but I just want to go back again because it keeps coming up. And I had two patients last week that had a discussion about this, and I just wanted to remind you kind of what it means to have degenerative disc disease. I want to remind you what that means, and I want to remind you about what exactly how you might consider handling it. Okay, and so I'm going to put it up here, and I want to show you some. When you look at a neck, let me get some of this off of the. So when you look at a neck, This is an X-ray that we're looking at for you guys on the radio. We're looking at a cervical X-ray. So you can, if you're at home, you want to Google that on your phone or whatever, you can look lateral cervical X-ray, and there's the jaw, there's the teeth. So this person, we're looking at this person from the side, and we've talked a lot about how important that cervical curve is, and it's all about vectors, right? Like it's kind of an engineering issue. It's physics. And I heard Elon Musk talking about physics last night, and it was an awesome little clip that I watched. And he was talking about you can break man's laws, but try breaking the laws of physics and see how that works out for you. He's talking about his rockets, and he was talking about how, look, the rockets, there's only one thing that really makes them go into orbit. There might be 1,000 things that happen from in the whole process of everything, but there's really only one thing that makes them go into orbit, and you got to get that right because it's the law of physics. You got to be able to do that. Well, I study in the office a technique called chiropractic biophysics. And now I'm not certified in that, so I'm not trying to act like I am, but I have been studying it for 20 years. And by the way, I forgot to announce this on the radio yesterday, but yesterday was the beginning of my 20th year in chiropractic. I don't know if I said that or not last night. So I've completed 19 years, and I was in my brother-in-law's office before I went to chiropractic school. And so I actually, March of 2000 is when I started. So we're almost in 24 years in chiropractic, but so I've been studying chiropractic biophysics and the physics of things, because I don't know if it's because I'm a male or the way my brain works or whatever, but the physics of things where it makes sense. It's like, how does this fit together? How does this fit together? How does the cervical spine here? Right here is the atlas. It's the number one vertebrae in your neck. Your very first of your spine. It's right there. This is the base of your skull that's coming around right there. And then your spinal cord is running right down through the middle. There's the back edge of the spinal cord, and then the back of the bone where that green line is, that's the front edge of the spinal cord right there. So your spinal cord is running right down through the middle of those right there. And the spinal cord, it's coming out and it's exiting at every level. Your nerves are exiting at every level, and there's a wrapping around it, the spinal cord. And so whenever you lose your curve, you put pressure on your spinal cord. You put pressure on the nerves that are exiting the spinal cord, and you put pressure on the disc that are between them. So each one of these discs so here is a vertebrae. Here's C2 right here. And C2 has a thumb-like projection called a dens that comes up like this. And then C1 comes around the top of C2, and it's a ring. And that ring right there at C1 fits around the top of this C2. And that right there is where your spinal cord comes out of your head and goes right through the middle of that ring. So you can imagine if you have a ring. If you have a ring let's just pretend for a second that this is your spinal cord and this is your atlas. I don't know if you can see that very well, but if your atlas is offset, one side or the other, if your atlas moves, which it does, and it moves a little bit, it could be putting pressure on your spinal cord right at the top of your spine. Like right at the very top, you can have pressure on your spinal cord from your atlas being out of alignment. And I adjust patients all day long, and I almost always evaluate and adjust either the occiput or the atlas or C2. Like I will do that if that feels like that needs to be done, or from a functional neurology standpoint, it's where when you get all the way up here to the top, it gives us the most impact into the brain. And so depending on the person's health and what's going on, their oxygen levels and things like that, a lot of times from a wellness standpoint, we want to make sure that we're firing that area. But what I want to talk about, I don't want to talk so much about the curve, even though I could for the next 4 hours, just talk about the curve and the disc. But there's a disc that's sitting in between those two bones. And the disc loses its blood supply for the most part after about the age of 25. And there's a phenomenon called imbibition. It's the squeezing. It's like squeezing. I use the analogy of squeezing a sponge. If you have a dirty sponge under a sink and you squeeze that back and forth, you want to clean out that sponge. You got to put it under the water. You got to squeeze it, release it, squeeze it, release it, squeeze it, release it. Every time you squeeze it, you push that dirty water out. Every time you release it, it sucks that good clean water back into the sponge, and that's kind of what happens with that disc after the age of 25. And so it's very important that segment moves like it's supposed to in order to keep that imbibition going and keeping that disc healthy. It's very important. And so every one of those discs right there, they need that movement in order to stay healthy. So movement is the key. That's the key to the joints that move properly do not wear out. I wish everyone really understood this. Joints that move properly do not wear out in a human being's lifetime. I don't know how old you would have to live. You might have to live to be 150 or 200 years old before a joint that's actually moving properly wears out. And I had this conversation multiple times this week. One of the patients said, well, I just think it's because I'm getting old. And her right hip was hurting. And I said, well, how's your left hip feel? And she said, it feels fine. And I said, well, it was born on the same day that your right hip was born on. And then every time I say that, people just laugh, right? They're just kind of like, well, that's right. And I'm like, well, your left hip is fine, and it's the same age as your right hip. So how can you say that the reason that your right hip hurts is because you're getting old? It's not true. The reason that your right hip hurts is because it's not functioning properly, right? Okay, so we got to get it to function properly regardless of whether it's degenerative or not. So that's the normal curve on that left side. But on the right side over here, now this is a curve that's degenerative. The green line is the normal. The red dotted line is where this person's curve is. And you can see as you go down through here, here's C2, here's C3, and then you get into C4. Well, between C4 and C5, there's almost no space in between those two vertebrae right there. And then you come down here between C5 and C6, and there's almost no space in between those vertebrae. And then you come down here between C6 and C7, and now we've got this very white area on the screen. And this very white area is an increased amount of bone, which is increased calcification that's in this area, because that's really degenerative right there. So you've got 4 segments, you got 4 vertebrae and 3 different joints right there that are completely would be considered to be degenerative. That's what the medical world and the chiropractic world would call degenerative disc disease. And they will tell you that degenerative disc, you've got degenerative disc disease. I hear it if it's not every week, it's at least every multiple weeks. Like, I hear it a lot. I hear patients. I've had multiple patients this year that have gone to their doctor and listen, think about how this works. You go to your doctor and your neck is hurting. Your doctor takes an x-ray of your neck. Your doctor sees that you have degenerative disc disease in your neck. You have degeneration. You have degenerative disc. You have decreased disc height. You have bone spurring. You have increased calcification. You have no space there. That's going to be called degenerative disc disease. And what your doctor is going to do is they're going to marry those two things together. Your doctor's going to say, the patient presented with neck pain I took an x-ray of the patient. The patient has degenerative disc disease. Therefore, degenerative disc disease must be the reason that the person has pain. And I'm trying to explain to you that that is not true. That is not true. This particular person that has of this x-ray doesn't have pain in their neck. How do I know this? Because I've adjusted this patient this week. I know this person and I know that what their neck is, and I'm telling you, this person doesn't have neck pain. Now, does this person have changes in their neurology? Absolutely. Does this person have a change that might lead to a downstream change? Absolutely. That's why it's so important that we make sure that we get that handled. But so I have another patient that she went in because her low back was hurting and her hip was hurting. And she called me and she said, I've been to the doctor, they evaluated my spine, and they said that I have degenerative disc disease in my low back. And they're going to start me with physical therapy. And I'm like, okay, listen, let me explain something to you. I'm okay with all that. I'm fine. It's great. I'm a big fan of physical therapy. I think everybody should go to physical therapy personally. I really am a big fan of it. I think everybody ought to get evaluated. I think they ought to tell you where your weaknesses are, create a program for you to build your weaknesses. Fantastic. Don't have any problem with it. Okay. I said, all right. Did they take a look at your neck? And she was like, no. Well, I have her x-rays. I pulled up her x-rays on my computer when I was sitting there talking to her on the phone, and I have her x-rays. And I said, well, did you show them the degenerative disc disease that's in your neck? And she's like, what? And I said, yeah, you have degenerative disc disease in your neck too. How's your neck feel? And she said, well, my neck feels fine. And I'm like, exactly. Exactly. Is there a time that the degeneration in the spine, is there a time that this degeneration might be the genesis of your pain? Yes, that's possible. But look, I'm telling you, this right here is pretty bad, and there's no neck pain with this person. So the lot of times I just feel so bad for my patients when they go to the doctor and the doctor tells them they have degenerative disc disease, and the way that they hear that in their head is the doctor just told them that they have cardiovascular disease, like they have some sort of, like you've got cancer, like you've got a disease that's going to kill you, right? And why do they call it degenerative disc disease? They call it degenerative disc disease because they can make money off of it. They can charge you for a pharmaceutical to treat the disease, right? That's why they say that. But it's not always the case. And she's got degenerative disc disease in her neck, but her low back hurts. And she's got degenerative disc disease in her low back, but her neck doesn't hurt. And it's like, hey, look, maybe your hip is hurting because you're not functioning properly. That's the point that we got to get to. I feel bad. It hurts my feelings. It hurts my heart that my patients get tricked into that. That you get tricked, that your doctor says the reason you're having your problem is because you have degeneration in your spine. That's not the truth. The reason, most of the time, the reason you're having your problem is because the joint is not functioning properly. And can you get the joint to function properly, or can you get the joint to function in a level that's going to decrease the pain or stop the pain? Or is it something totally different? That maybe it's muscle imbalance, maybe it's brain imbalance, maybe there's some other factor, maybe it's nutritional inflammation, maybe there's some other factor that's going on. And you get told that that's what your problem is. And and let me just show you. I think I can pull up another example that is a little bit. Let me see if I can find it, because I was looking at this one earlier. Yeah. So, lost everything. This is an example. I can get back to my screen. This is an example of a person that's just lost their curve. No, that's not it. This person's lost their curve, but they don't have degenerative disc disease. They're in the early stages. So this is what we get from kids. This is where we get a young person that comes in, and now you can see right here that we've lost the curve. The red line is their curve, and then the green line is the normal. And now what is happening is now we're getting into the physics of things, because the weight of the head is being distributed down onto the disc. And after you lose that blood supply and you can't pump that disc properly, then that disc will start to become dry and brittle. It begins to chip away, and now that's where it happens. But it starts in early life by putting pressure on these joints in the disc when we lose our cervical curves. And we lose our cervical curves for multiple reasons. But one of the reasons is that our brain is not functioning properly. We're not getting enough firing into the brain, and our frontal lobes are not firing to the level that they're supposed to fire, which has got us in a flexion. The muscles that are responsible for flexion are turned on, and now it's pulling our head forward. Other things are, you can get into whiplash type situations. You can have some sort of injury. You can have, you can get in a car wreck or something like that. You can spend your time looking down all the time at your phone. And when you look down at your phone, you change that cervical curve. And then you change the cervical curve, and then years go by, and then you start to put pressure down right there. So as a young person, if a young person comes in, we just want to show them their curve. I just want to show them, hey, look, this is what's going on with you right now. And then sometimes I'll show them what it looks like when you get to be 60 or 70 years old, when you don't take care of your curves as a young person. It's pretty simple the way that works, that once you lose the curve, you put pressure on these discs. Now, a young person still got good blood supply to the disc, so that person is going to be able to withstand a little bit more of that. It's going to take a little bit longer, but once you start getting past that 25-year-old age and that mid-20s, now you start to lose that blood supply, and now there you go. The other thing to think about is the stress that it puts on the backside of the neck. All these muscles that are trying to keep your head up. When your head is up, it's kind of like holding a bowling ball when you have a bend in your wrist. It's a whole lot easier to hold that bowling ball than if you moved your head forward, right? And when you move your head forward, you're going to create increased amount of tension in the muscles on the back, which is your trap muscle, which is your levator scapula muscle that comes up from that shoulder blade, the tip of your shoulder blade, and into your cervical spine. And then there's a number of other muscles that are involved in all that, but those are kind of the two big ones, and a lot of people understand what those are. So now what's happening is I've got my head forward all day long, and now I've got this stretch reflex that's happening. So I put that levator and that trap into an extension, and that wants to make it pull itself back. And now I've got an increased amount of tone at the insertion point of the trap, and some of these small muscles that are going on right back here, which can lead to a lot of headaches. And the headache that stems from the occiput a lot of times comes around to the eyeball. So I'll take the x-rays of the person. I'll mark the x-rays of the person and then we take them in and do their right eye test. And while they're doing their right eye test, I mark their x-rays. So I'm ready for them when they come back. Then we do their reflex, our pupillary light reflex test. And then we sit and talk, and they'll say, yeah, I get these headaches. And I was like, and where do the headaches, where are they? And they said, a lot of times they start right here. And I'm like, and then they come around to your eyeball, right? And they're like, yeah, how'd you know that? Right. They start right there because you've got forward head posture. I can tell you right there that, and your atlas is stuck in extension. And I mean, there's some things that are going on that are wrong right there. But the with the forward head posture and the stretch reflex that you deal with, and that's keeping your head forward, then you're keeping that tension on you right there. And it takes more energy throughout the day. So not only are you changing the neurological impulse from going into your brain, these joints on the back, these are called facet joints. And these facet joints, when they fire, when they touch, they fire. And when they don't touch, they don't fire. So you lose the facet joints when you open the curve, which a lot of times will lead to anxiety and depression. And that because you're not getting enough information up to that right hemisphere, right? Then we were getting the pressure on the disc. Then we're getting the increased muscle tone right there. And when you have 25 millimeters of forward head posture, so you take this point and you go from that point back to the green line. So you go from the back of C2 to the green line. If you measure that, and that's 25 millimeters of forward head posture, now you put an extra 10 pounds of pressure on your low back. So forward head posture also causes low back disc problems just because of physics. And it's like, so what causes forward head posture? How do I fix your low back? Where should I start? Should I start with your brain? Should I start with your low back? Should I analyze your entire spine? Should I just take an x-ray of your low back if you have low back pain, but not pay any attention to your cervical spine? Like, not in our office. I am absolutely 100% not buying that model. And they try to teach us that after we were at the end of chiropractic school. Going on further, they're like, hey, you know what? Only take an x-ray of the symptom area. And it's like hogwash. Like that's not even understanding science. That's not even understanding physics. That's not even understanding neurology. Like, no, it's not that. That's not the way that a person should be evaluated. Like, just you come in, my low back hurts, so I'm just going to take a low x-ray of your low back. Well, that's if you're looking for the standard, the medical standard of x-ray is tumor, dislocation, or fracture. That's what you're looking for. That's what radiologists look for. And they're not really worried about curves. They're not really worried about neurology. They're just basically looking for those main things on an x-ray. And so it kind of gets into the philosophy of kind of how it works. So anyway, that was that's kind of a refresher course on the second half there of it's kind of a refresher course of the cervical curve and how important that it is. And just don't get caught up with that degenerative disc disease thing. Don't get caught up in thinking that that's a disease. Don't get way overreactive. I had one person tell me that they think they might have to have back surgery because they have degenerative disc disease. And I'm like, what? Like, no, like not, don't jump right into that. It's not really the direction that you want to go. There's some things we could do to help that, and getting the right kind of care will really help you out a lot. So, hey, that's the end of the show. I hope you guys enjoyed that. It's kind of a refresher stuff that we've gone over months ago. But I thought we'd just kind of re-hit some of that tonight because it keeps coming back in the office. I hope everybody has a great night. We'll be back tomorrow night, and we'll be studying again. So I'm not sure what we're going to study, but last week's study session was pretty cool. If you want to study with us tomorrow night, come back and join us, and we'll figure out something we can study. And I hope you guys have a great evening, and we'll see you tomorrow night at 6.